And the sad thing is all the old buddies I ran around with, a lot of them have passed away. So you sit there, the neat thing, I was sitting there on a log or sitting at a show and hearing all these stories of these old collectors and people we were running the woods with. And you learn and hear all these great stories and you're like, man, and some of these guys are gone. They're, what's left are the stories.
Hi, I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading. Today we're talking with Brian Lamaster about his history in muzzleloading, his experience in restoration and collecting, as well as his new venture, Lamaster Arms, where Brian is working to share some of his more than 30 years of experience with newcomers and experienced collectors to muzzleloading alike.
Good morning.
Good morning, Brian. How are you?
We are good.
That's good. Made it back from Knoxville safe and sound?
We did, and actually it was a pretty easy trip overall getting back. I mean, it took 81 down. That can be a nightmare sometimes, but actually we did really well.
Good.
It was a fun show, a lot of nice people. That's, it's been some years since I've been down there, but it used to be in the museum, and now it's in the Jubilee Center, which is really nice. I mean, it was a fun show, a lot of nice people.
Yeah, that's what I hear about it. I've not been able to make it down there, but it's, I think, probably close to a 12-hour or more drive for me, so it takes me a little bit more planning.
Yeah, that's a haul.
Yeah.
One thing about it, if you love iron-mounted guns, you'll see more iron-mounted Southern rifles down there than any other show you'll probably ever go to that I know of.
Wow.
Yeah, lots of fun stuff. There was a John Bull rifle that just came out that was all engraved. Like a presentation piece. It was brass mounted actually. And then it had silver pipes and, silverware showing some of the components and inlays in the barrel. Oh, it was a neat thing.
Oh, man, I got to get down there.
Yeah, it would be worth a trip because, just find somebody nearby that you can carpool with. That always makes things easier.
Yeah, that would help out for sure. Will you be at Kempton again this year?
I will be.
Good.
I'll be at the Kempton. I think I've only ever missed 1 year in 30 some years total.
Oh, wow. That's
37 great. Probably, I bet. Doing a seminar this year on building patchbox releases. So I go through the whole details of the things I've seen here in the shop as far as the spring mechanisms, the placement of the releases themselves, lift springs, and then take questions as to, things that people may not have seen. I've been fortunate through the years and blessed to have a lot of fun things here in the shop and take them apart and do restoration. So I'm more than happy to share that with people.
Yeah, you've definitely seen some things that a lot of us haven't and probably never will,
Well, and, that's the thing about what the Kentucky Rifle Foundation and what I'm trying to do with their website is to get as much of this information out there and share it, because so many of the great guns, once they go in a few of these collections, they don't surface for sometimes never, but shoot, it can be 50 years before you see that rifle pop up again.
Yeah. And that's a lot of history that kind of, and maybe hidden's not the right word, but it could really benefit a lot of people to see it.
It does. And the crazy thing is sometimes the simple guns that may be signed surface, and that one gun can help unlock, 2 or 3 collectors out there that have a piece that's not signed by the same maker.
Oh, really? Wow.
So even an insignificant gun, even parts of an insignificant gun sometimes can unlock the key of, there's guys that set all their lives waiting to figure out this one, who made it.
Right.
And then one piece surfaces and you're like, oh my gosh, look at that. Now we know who built all these other ones.
Wow. I hadn't really thought about it in that context, but yeah, there's a lot of mystery pieces out there. Huh.
Yeah, there really are. I mean, you walk around and, a lot of people attribute to different makers, but until you have a signed one, that unlocks the key. I mean, definitely pulls all the thing. Plus, when they surface, they actually tell you who they learn from. Many times, even if you don't find the guy in the history books or in the gun books, once you see one of his sign pieces, you're like, ooh, okay, now we got a better idea of maybe where he learned his trade. So we learn every time we go out.
Right. So is that what you were doing down in Knoxville then? You were kind of taking the Lamaster Arms project on the road?
Not so much. I mean, I had some fun things to take down. I had, I think, about 4 or 5 iron mounted guns. I just picked up a David Smith rifle, and we're in the process of doing a little educational video to put up on the site. And, not to go into long detail, but I mean, this is supposedly the only signed one that's surfaced, according to Shelby Lane's book on Kentucky stuff. So it's pretty neat. It's a pretty over the top iron mounted gun with silver and stuff. So I want to take that down and show it. There was a collection we picked up, had a lot of small things, horns and bags and stuff. I took some of that down. It was just nice. I haven't been down to that show in, I don't know, probably almost 10 years. And it's as fun as it was last time.
Well, that's good. That's great. After Kempton last year, I wanted to reach out, but seeing the teasers for the Lamaster Arms, that got me like, okay, I need to get talking. I need to talk to Brian about this.
Yeah. And I mean, we're trying to, we can save some of this stuff for the interview side of it, but I mean, we're trying to help educate. If we don't, I mean, with what you're doing with your site and with your YouTube channel stuff that you're popping up there, I mean, we're trying to glean the harvest out there because the kids aren't getting educated through a lot of the school systems. And so we're trying to lay down some groundwork. If there's interest, at least have it out there in a medium that they can absorb. Yes. Absolutely. And so many young people, I mean, they know what QR codes were. Up until 3 weeks ago, I didn't know what a damn QR code was. It was like, I've never used one. Catch up with the modern day a little bit. I still don't run to it, but I've got a young fella that's helping. He's very savvy on that. So that's helping us a bunch.
That's great. I mean, it's every little bit helps, I think. And I think being where people are and where they can access it really promotes and preserves this for the future.
It does. And I think, and here again, I've had a lot of things through the shop, and now I'm starting to sell collections for friends, and these things are coming in. They're coming to me saying, hey, I don't want to send it to auction, because so many of the auction sites, it takes 2 people to set a price on a gun at an auction. If you don't have those 2 people in the room, it's not going to, find a realized price that's realistic for the importance of the gun. Where if you sell it straight out or put a preset price, then you've got a much better chance of, not maximizing the potential. And then the other side that I do and work really hard at is to make sure that whoever purchases the gun gets a realistic assessment of the condition. Because I've done restoration and built guns for, I think, 38 years. I did the math here a while back. Somebody asked me, I'm like, crap, that's long. I mean, all of a sudden you look, I mean, when I started this, heck, I had brown hair and a brown beard. And, I look in the mirror and going, wow, who the heck is that guy? Yeah. And the sad thing is all the old buddies I ran around with, a lot of them have passed away. Yeah. So you sit there, but the neat thing, I was sitting there on a log or sitting at a show and hearing all these stories of these old collectors and people we were running the woods with. And you learn and hear all these great stories and you're like, man, and some of these guys are gone. What's left are the stories. I heard somebody recently say when a guy dies, it's like burning a library. It is, yes. That's a pretty good statement.
Brian, how did you get your start in muzzleloading and long rifle building then? Speaking of stories.
What happened is I was working for my dad and we were doing satellite work stuff, electronics. And we did some work for a neighbor, went in his house and he had some custom guns up in the ceiling on his rafters. And I looked down and thought, man, isn't that neat? And he said, I'll help you build one. And like so many people in the 80s, you just went and got a Thompson Center kit and he helped me stick it together. Then I decided I wanted a full stock gun. And he said, well, go down to Woodstock to Keith Casteel's shop and pick up the parts and we'll get started. So I went down and saw Keith and his stuff was over the top, engraved, chiseled, gorgeous. Yeah. And I walked in there and got to know Keith, and Keith says, well, I'll help you put it together. And so I talked to my neighbor, Mr. Hines, and he's like, oh my, if he'll help you, you need to go down and have him help you put this together. So long and short of it is, Keith helped me build the first one. Then the next one, I did more of the work on it. And then we just kept building guns and for family. And 30-some years later, we're still putting them together.
That's incredible.
We don't put as many together because I got into restoration work because one is I couldn't afford an old gun that wasn't broken. Mm. So I would buy an old gun and I'd fix it up because I could learn from it. And then once we got into putting them together and fixing them, it was like, then a collector said, hey, I need one fixed. So, and then restoration kind of just took over.
Okay.
And also I had a hard time getting parts back in the 80s. So sometimes, you think about parts today, you can get a gun barrel and go to a gun show and pick up a swamp barrel.
Yeah.
But there was not as many suppliers, and it was just very difficult. So, this is how I paid my mortgage payment, was with the gun building.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So I went full time in, I think I went full time in 1992.
Okay.
And stopped working for anybody since then. Also did work for Last of the Mohicans. Mm. So I was contacted, I think it was in 1991, got a call from a buddy of mine that was helping them down there and said, hey, they need some guns. So I went down and they said, they needed, 100 trade guns put together. Wow. And I'm not a kit put together guy. I'm not mine would start with a block of wood. I'm like, I can't do that.
Right.
Physically, I can't do that. So once I got there, they came out and they had some guns and got to talk to the director and Daniel Day-Lewis, and they were looking for some key actor guns. So I ended up making 3 guns for them.
Okay.
So I made the 2 little identical guns that Magua used, and then I built a little rifle that I think Uncas used in the movie.
Okay.
So that was an experience. And then at that point, people started wanting more, taking more orders. And then my dad's business was fading off. And at that point, it was just an easy transition to stay back in the shop all the time.
Okay. So you didn't pick up the 100 trade guns that they needed, but you were still able to be a part of the production.
I did not. I had no desire to build 100 kit guns. It was, and there's other stories I could tell you. Working down there, it was just kind of funny. Yeah. I learned it's like movie people, you think, oh man, this is glamorous. But really, from what I could see, it was kind of a gypsy life.
Right.
Just everybody's trying to line up to get to the next movie, and they're pretty cutthroat overall. And I'm like, it was different than what I expected.
Yeah, there's a lot of hurry up and crunch, get it all done. Okay, thanks, bye. Right.
And they're not worried so much about quality. They're not so much worried about things that I thought was important. It really, in the scheme of things, it wasn't that important. Mm-hmm. They just want it to go off when they squeeze the trigger, and then you get to see some of the old movie guns that they have. And some of them were electrified, and they had all these, took modern primers. It just, to make, somebody thought that was a great idea. They never shot a real flintlock that was tuned up
that worked. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're willing to put money on whether it goes off or not. And people are like, if I take care of it and I do it my job, it'll take care of me and do its job. Yeah. But people don't realize that until you play with them.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to get across. There's that, probably 150, 200 year now misconception about it. It's difficult to overcome.
Well, and they see the ones in the movie where it's like click, boom. And then you're sitting there going, whoa, wait a minute. Mine doesn't do that unless I've really done something bad or it's gotten wet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my oh no moment right there. What have I done?
Yeah, I had a couple of those. I'd squeeze down on some. I was in a pouring rainstorm one time, and the thunder and lightning's cracking, and the birds are just gobbling their heads off, and they're still on the roost. And I did the best I could to keep it dry.
Yeah.
And when those two birds came around, I made a couple of calls. They came running right to me. And when I pulled that trigger, it just sat there and went psh, and fizzled and fizzled and fizzled. And they turn and they're running the other way. And I'm sitting down on them. I'm like, come on, come on, come on, come on. And it just sounded like a firecracker. And it never went off. I was like, oh, man. Yeah.
As your stomach just sinks into the dirt.
Oh, pretty much. I mean, they were so close. I mean, they had gotten so close to me. I couldn't have missed them unless my shot pattern didn't spread enough. But it was fun.
Oh, yeah.
It was one of those memories you go, okay.
Yep.
So since then, we have a few little tricks in our trade of waxing stuff up and sealing things off to try to help with that kind of stuff.
Okay. So
and I've tried to share that in the seminars too with people.
Okay.
Like at Kempton, I think I mentioned that last year, that, there's things you can do to help prevent some of the rain getting you. Little gobs of wax right in front of the lock to divert the water off.
Yeah, with our turkey season here opens up tomorrow, so I'm
nice.
I'm jonesing to get out.
I got out yesterday for a little bit. Nobody wanted to dance, but at least we got out in the woods and enjoyed it for a bit. And then I was going to go out this morning, but I had too much to get into.
Yeah.
We got a lot going on here.
So what's your preferred turkey hunting arm then these days?
This year, last year too. Normally it was I've shot them with a rifle because in Virginia you used to be able to shoot a muzzleloading rifle.
Oh, okay.
And I shot a few with a muzzleloading rifle, and then I've shot them with a little tight choke shotgun that I built. And then last year I had a friend that fixed me up with a double 20 gauge, an original double 20 gauge that has new barrels put on it. And whoever did the assembly on the barrels, I'm like, really nice. And there's such a pleasure. It's funny because when you hunt in the woods all the time and you have one rifle, one shot, one barrel. But when you have two, I sit back against a tree and you hear something coming in, you cock the hammer back, but you got two. All of a sudden you got this extra barrel, and I just smile every time I cock that second barrel back because you're thinking so many times if you only had that extra barrel, you could have knocked them down.
You're Superman at that point with the second.
Oh, my. And I've had a lot of fun working loads up for it. And actually, I'm doing almost like a shot cup for it, a paper cartridge.
Okay,
So what I'm doing is I'm taking paper and I'm putting glue on it, rolling it up. Yeah. And making it like a cigar. And then once it sets up, I glue a wooden dowel plug in the back about 3/8 of an inch and then split the sides of it. Oh. And it's getting me a little better pattern.
Okay.
It's giving me a better pattern. Plus, the nice thing is I can pre-measure the shot at home, put it over the card wad in the cartridge, pinch it down almost like an English or British musket cartridge. Mm-hmm. And then when I get out in the field, I can put my couple wads down I like on top of the powder, slide this little guy down and put a thin card, one of those overshot card wads on it. And it's got the whole package in there. And it's really, I had a lot of fun playing with it last year. And this year it's pretty nice.
I've heard a lot about the paper shot cups, and I think that's something I've got to try here at some point. I've been playing around with not doing it, but I got to get tooled up and try it because it seems to really change the game.
It does. I mean, it's just an old time, paper card, shot cup like they used turn of the century. Yeah. And what made me think about it, I was rolling some military paper cartridges for a reenactment of a living history event where we had the competition. They had to shoot a musket. And I've got an old Brown Bess musket. So I was rolling those up and I thought, you know what? I've never messed with this, but I bet you could build a pretty good shotgun assembly because on these cylinder bores, you don't get a great pattern out of them. Right. And, the shot cup, in the beginning, I didn't split the shot cup and shoot. It went through the target at 20 yards sideways. It still had all the shot in it. I'm like, ooh. So then I went back and perforated it, and that didn't quite work as nice as I wanted. But then when I started splitting it, and once it's set up, it was hard. I had just taken razor blade and split the sides down on it. Then all of a sudden it started showing a nice pattern.
Ah, okay. Okay. So are you leaving, like a quarter of an inch or half an inch that's not slit at the base, or are you slitting the whole way? Okay.
No, I'm actually slitting it down to within probably, maybe 5/8 of an inch to,
okay,
somewhere half inch down in there. Because if you leave too much, sometimes some of that shot stays in that cup when it goes out of there. And then the other thing you do is once you split it, then I take one sheet of the paper, which is I'm just using like padding machine paper.
Okay.
A bunch of rolls of that stuff. And then you take that adding machine paper, and then I put three little strips of glue down the sides of the now cut cup is what you have. And by doing that, you don't want to put too much because it'll glue the thing back as a sleeve.
Okay.
So you just put a couple little daubs of glue right down like little lines on it, and then run one sheet of paper. And when that comes out of it, it'll split that paper.
Huh.
If you put too many wraps on it, it'll keep it together and impede the shot coming out. And then what that does is it holds the cup together. So when you put your shot in it, it keeps it all as a little unit. So when you reach in your bag or cartridge box, or whatever you want to shoot, you can just pull that out and slip that dude right down the barrel. And then what I do is I write on the side of it what shot I put in it, and also put in arrows. So when you pull it out, you know what the direction you want to send it out. Oh,
very smart. Yeah, because if it gets jostled around in a bag, you could get the wrong direction there.
Well, normally I have like some kind of a tin. I'm sitting there holding in my hand.
Okay.
I put them in a tin like little soldiers all lined up in there so they don't bang against each other.
Ah, smart.
Because if they squeeze too much, if you squeeze them or do anything to them, the shot will squeeze out through those slits in the side. And if it tears it, then you can't get it down the barrel.
Okay.
Because it fits really tight.
Okay.
Really, the key is when you make the wrap around to build the cup itself. I mean, I shoot like 14 inches of paper. And so if you do like 16 inches of paper, it'll make it to where you can't get it down the bore.
Ah, okay. This is almost like, sounds to me a lot like paper patched bullets, in kind of a later period. You've got to really get that wrapping right.
Yes. Yeah. It just gives you that ability.
Okay.
And, if you're out there and it takes a long time to build them, and for turkey hunting, I'm fine with it. But if I were duck hunting or something, it's a lot of time that you're investing.
Yeah.
Somebody out there in the world probably knows where to find, cardboard tube sleeves that it would start. You would get ahead of the curve on that. But I'm old fashioned. I just like making the stuff in the house.
Right.
It's all good.
It's better than watching TV or something,
Keeps me out of trouble.
Yeah, there you go. So kind of going back to the story of your work here, what happened after Last of the Mohicans then in building those pieces? Were you full on into the restoration work at that point, or were you still building custom pieces?
I was still building custom pieces. The most I ever built, I think, was about 12 in 1 year.
Oh, wow.
And those are scratch guns, no kits or anything. That's starting with a block of wood. I set all my barrels and ramrods in my shop.
Uh-huh.
And I like doing that. I know that there's a lot of guys that haven't done someplace else, and some of the guys do really nice work. But my thing has always been that I like waking up in the morning, walking out in the shop and saying, I'm going to build a gun today. And I get in there and I start setting the barrel and I set my ramrod. And if the ramrod's high or it's a little bit low, it's my fault. It's not somebody else's fault, for drilling a ramrod. And all of a sudden you can't put a screw in it, or you got to put a stupid notch in the screw. It's my bad. Yeah. And I don't mind taking it, but I hate working with somebody else's bads. It drives me crazy.
I can understand that. Yeah.
Well, and when you get a custom gun, you can get them from a guy, and they build them from scratch, and they're not the same. So you could get 6 guns from the guy, and so many times, I walk up to a craftsman's table and I look at something, And if his heart and his head are in the right place, you can pick out the one that he made for his wife or his kids or his best friend.
Okay.
Because they put more in, they may build the same thing over and over again because that's, whether it's a Leonard Reedy or a Bonowitz copy or whatever. But when they have their whole mindset is in a different place, it's a happy place, their work shows it. And sometimes you walk up to a table. One guy I knew used to do horns and stuff. I'd walk up and I'd say, I want that priming horn. He says, I can't sell it to you. And I said, why not? He says, because I made that for my wife. I'm like, okay. And so every time I'd see him, I'd try to buy it. He's like, I'm not selling that. And I'm like, I know.
But there's that, like you say, that their heart and the mind was in it. It wasn't work. Yeah. That was, the right thing for them that kind of flowed through.
And it shows in their work. And the old timers were the same way. You can see a lot of guns out there. Some guys were extremely consistent with their work in the 18th and 19th century. You look at John Armstrong. Very seldom do you see a bad John Armstrong. They might be heavy, but he's very consistent. He makes almost all of his parts. I mean, he's making locks when everybody else in the world was buying locks. Uh-huh. He was building his own from scratch. And I've only ever seen one Armstrong that didn't have a handmade lock. And some of the guys are like that. But then you look at like J.P. Beck. Not every Beck is a screamer. Once in a while, you'll see one that whatever works. There so many times simple guns can be the most elegant guns out there, and it's hard to get your customer to understand that once in a while. And it's hard to get young guys that are wanting to build rifles to understand, get your architecture and get your proportions properly set in a pleasing. It comes easy to some guys. Some need use the golden mean to lay things out to get their eye to start seeing the little nuances that make a gun special. And, it's not always taught. Sometimes guys are just naturals at it. And then others, they have to work harder at it.
So when you're planning architecture like that, are you doing a lot of drawing beforehand, or is it just kind of, you've studied so much that you can kind of see it in the wood and go that route?
Normally the gun, it depends on the gun I'm building.
Okay.
I mean, it starts with the wood. I mean, because I keep a lot of stocks. I mean, I keep stocks. Shoot, I'll get stocks 20 plus years. And when I buy a piece of wood, I just put it away, and I don't use a piece of wood for probably at least 5 years. So it just kind of acclimates with the shop. The old timers say it would marry with the shop. It's just equalizing the humidity. And if it's it's like an early gun. I mean, for example, if I build an early 2-inch wide butted gun, I don't like real tight curl on it. I prefer to have a wider, interesting curl. Maybe it has a little burliness or some flair to it. And that appeals to me because most of the old guns that I see that are early tend to have that kind of wood. Then when you get into the golden age, whether it's York County or some of the Shenandoah Valley guys, the curl tends to get a little tighter, and then I'll pick a piece of wood for that. And then architecturally, I end up measuring the customer so the gun fits them. So many times, if you need a 14-inch trigger pull or you need a 13 3/4 and you're cast off, you get a big wide guy that's big across the chest, he needs a little cast off to get the gun tucked away from him a little bit. So I start with the numbers first and then build the architecture pretty much with those numbers basis. Okay. And then the style of the gun, if they want a particular type of gun, it's like, I don't think that's what, it's not going to look the way you want it to look and feel the way you want it to feel, because you start manipulating the architecture and the numbers on an original. And all of a sudden, it doesn't look like a Werner. It doesn't look like a Beck. It doesn't look like a Schroeder, because you have, if you're making a copy of a gun or stylistic of it, if you start manipulating how far the comb is down on the wrist of a gun, all of a sudden the gun doesn't look like the one that you tell them, hey, this is a Schroyer.
Okay.
No, it's not a Schroyer. And it's not that it's not going to be a good gun. It's just if you're going for a target point of saying, hey, I'm going to build a gun that fits this particular school or maker, you need to handle enough of them and need to, mentally think about it. Most of the time I get in the books and study them, or I've had lucky enough to have one here in the shop, and it inspires me to use certain features off of it on the rifles that I'm building.
Okay.
And that's what I'm trying to do with the website, is to put pictures and stuff up there, some of the things that are coming through. Another thing I'm doing that hasn't been posted yet, but we're going to get there. I'm actually doing a video. I call it like a gun builder's video. It's only like, I don't know, it'd probably be less than 3 minutes, both sides of the gun, where I've got a magnetic stick that goes on top with a tape measure on it, and then it's got a down stick on the back. And it's a whole lot. I'm trying to do the similar thing, except in video form, that George Shumway did in his books, because he would give you the dimensions, the drop, he would give you the trigger pull, the barrel length. And with this video, it pans from the nose cap all the way to the buttstock, and then vice versa. And what it does is it's going to make it to the point that you can watch the video and stop it and expand it and open it up, zoom in, and you can get the dimensions of how long the pipes are, the nose cap, barrel length, tenons, drop, how tall the butt plate is.
Yeah.
And be able to do all that with your phone or your computer.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be an incredible resource.
It's coming.
Awesome.
I've got probably about 6 right now. We're just trying to figure out how to get them on the website because of the database and storage and things that are out of my paper grade. I know what I want. I just don't know how to get them.
Right. Yeah. Huh. So let's just talk about the website then a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Lamaster Arms and how it's been a bit of a shift, but also familiar for you.
What's happened for years is I've done restoration and I've been building guns all this time. And I've got fellas through the years that I've helped deaccession their collections. And so they come at me and they say, hey, I want you to sell my stuff. And I've done that over time, and go to the shows and buy and sell and trade in conjunction with the restoration and the building guns. Well, I've always wanted, when I was on the Kentucky Rifle Foundation board, I wanted to do something, or I thought we needed to do something up on the internet besides our website, like videos and educational things. And at the time, I was not in a position to be able to spearhead the project. I mean, if you're going to a group of guys that, and saying, hey, we need to do this, and if you're not in the front of the pack leading the pack, then you just need to keep it in your pocket and save it. And that's pretty much what I did. And now I'm at a point where I think we need to do a lot what you're doing. It's basically you're stretching out and you're educating our next generation and the collectors now in a medium that they understand. And every time you see a kid, they're stuffed on the phone. Right. So the more we put out there in a educational form, it could be the kid's doing research on Martin Fry or somebody, and he's an ancestor, and all of a sudden he gets on the net to see what he can find. And my goal is that if he looks, hopefully somewhere down the line, I've got a Martin Fry on the website, and he can learn some history and see a video and maybe inspire and plant a seed that'll grow into a young collector and hopefully somebody that gets into what we do. Yeah.
I was really shocked. I mean, I'm by no means an expert, but when I started sharing some of the antique arms that I've had access to, I've had several people write in that builder was an ancestor, and that they'd always heard about the guns that they built, but they'd never seen one. And that really added another element to that for me of this, it's neat and it's cool, but the importance of that. And I love that's one of the first things you mentioned was getting this stuff out there so these new people can find it, learn from it, and get attached to it. I think that's great.
Well, and last year at the CLA show, there was a fella that came by, and I looked at his name badge. I won't put his name out there. I don't know if he wants to, but anyway, he comes by and he has a gunmaker's name on his last name. I asked him, I said, "You any relation?" Well, I'll say he had Lauk on it. Worked in Winchester, and I used to have a shop right down in Winchester, about 4 blocks and 2 blocks over and 4 blocks up from where Simon Lauk worked. And I said to him, I said, "You any relation?" He says, "Yeah." He said, "I've been trying to get one of my ancestors' rifle for a couple of years. I keep missing them." And I told him, I said, "Well, I tell you what, why don't you come back in about an hour? Let me call a buddy of mine." And I knew somebody that had one. And I called him on the phone. He sent me pictures. So when he came back through, I said, "That gun's available if you like it." And the long and the short of it is he bought it, and he was so tickled. He took it to the family reunion that week, and that makes me happy.
Yeah.
To help people find something that they've been, whether you want lusting, chasing, interested in, that is what I'm looking to do. And also at the same time, help educate anybody that wants to look at the website.
Yeah. So there's the kind of educational portion of it, but then you're cataloging all of these things, and that kind of leads into some of the auctions that you're running as well, right?
Well, I ran an auction, wasn't real happy with the way that went down.
Okay.
I keep learning a whole lot about auction venues and stuff. So the next thing we're doing, May 9th and 10th, we're actually having a 2-day online gun show.
Okay.
And we've got about 40 guns that haven't been out. So we've got about 40 guns out of collections that we've been consigning with, or they're consigning with us. And the objective is to set up something that's like, most people don't understand. When you go to, say, Baltimore, some of the big shows, any of the shows, the dealers or the collectors that want to sell stuff, they come to the show normally the day before to set up.
Yeah.
So when you walk in the door, a lot of times the best deals, the cool things have already been scooped up by other table holders.
Yes.
My goal is to set up a 2-day show that when the door opens, a virtual door at 9:00 in the morning, everybody's on the same playing field. So when you walk in the door, it'll have a buy now price. And so once you register and we know who you are, as soon as you push buy now, it'll be probably slow because we're doing this without software. What I've realized is every time you add any software to help you, smooth things out, it costs somebody.
Yeah.
And so either costs me or it costs the buyer. Our goal is to try to make things as smooth and as personable as we can with the purchases. So if you push buy now, it'll come up. We'll put on hold. And once we know who it is and that their finances are good, then we'll put sold. And so the show will run for 2 days, Friday and Saturday. And then all the stuff will come off the website. And the reason we're not leaving it, I don't want to run a 365-day-a-year website with material up there.
Yeah. Because
I need to get back to my shop and enjoy building guns, and I don't want to be a full-time storekeeper.
Okay,
I just want
good.
to be part-time storekeeper.
Yeah. That was kind of my next question is how does this balance with the restoration and the building? Because that's obviously a big passion for you.
Oh yeah, that's a necessity. I would go crazy if I couldn't be in my shop. And so I've got, every time I go to a show, I have guys come up saying, "Hey, I've got some things I want to consign.
Okay.
And my goal is to help, I don't know, it's not deaccessioning their collection. I'm helping transfer ownership from one collector to another.
Right.
And the goal is to get a fair price for the collector that's selling it without it tanking or selling it, pennies on the dollar in an auction because nobody's interested at that time. And also make sure that the person that's buying it is getting what they're paying for.
Yeah.
So that's why we're doing videos. The gun builder's video has a measuring stick on it. The videos we put with the guns, I'm trying to get it to the point where you feel like you're picking the gun up in your hands and you get to run the full length of the gun with your eyes. You can stop it. You can zoom in and see any little restoration or repair. That's what I'm working towards.
Yeah. That's something that I've noticed a lot is people are looking for certain things, but they don't know where to look, or they don't necessarily have the connections to access that. And I think that's where what you're doing becomes important, because I've had people come up to me at shows saying, I'm looking for this particular maker.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't have a connection, necessarily with that name, but I can try to find somebody who does and make that happen.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that way, when our database, if you call and you say, hey, I'm interested in a John Sheets or Henry Sheets out of Stanton, I put that in your database. And so, and I've done this for years. I'll be walking around the Baltimore gun show, come across a really good gun, call one of my buddies on the phone that I know he's looking for that. And I'll say, hey, I'm sitting here looking at a Fordney or whatever. And I'll shoot him. And nowadays, you got a picture. And I just shoot him a picture and say, do you want this?
Yeah.
And I give them a description of how heavy it is. I give them a description of how much work it has or what it needs. And I've sold a lot of guns or bought a lot of guns for people like that. Huh. And helping them build their collection. And I get a bumper in there that keeps the big wheel turning and help keep the lights on.
Right.
And that's part of it. Here again, like I say, with the website is a ever growing thing. I thought I was going to be able to do some videos of me building guns in here. And we're not there yet. We're not there. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the keeping the wheels turning and the lights on. The more you try to do, the more that becomes very important. It's very different than I think the public perception can be at times.
It is. And some of these fellas that run multiple businesses, I've got one friend that I think he's got 3 or 4 different businesses that he does. And I'm like, I don't see how he does it. I mean, just trying to balance between these couple things. Then we have a market farm out here that has greenhouses.
Okay.
That my wife runs that. And so I have to go out there and help with mechanics and stuff like that occasionally. And it's like, I don't see where people have enough time in their day.
Right. Yeah. So
it makes you appreciate sitting next to a big old oak tree, and whether you're chasing deer or turkey or whatever, it makes you appreciate that time so much more.
Yeah. Yeah. Just that, even if, I can usually only get out for 2, maybe 3 hours in a morning for turkey hunting. And that's, a really nice just pause on everything.
Yeah, I'm about the same way. The problem here is I live here. And so, I can walk out my door and do it. But then when you get out there, you're thinking about, man, I really need to be working on this and this. And after a while, you're just like, I think I better go on back to the house and get something knocked down.
Yeah, it's kind of eats into that piece.
It does. It doesn't. But then there's a time I get in my shop and I close the door and leave the cell phone somewhere else. And, I'm in my zone, and basically they know if they knock on the door, it's like kicking a grizzly bear in the butt. It's like, you really want to do this right now? Why don't you go away and just leave Brian in his happy place?
Yeah. We've got the do not disturb tag on the door here.
Oh, man. I'm thinking I'm going to put a sign on there that maybe the farm folks will understand. I'll have like, leave me be. Just carve a big bumblebee or something on it.
Right. This podcast is brought to you by Muzzleloader Magazine, the publication for traditional black powder shooters. Since 1974, Muzzleloader has been the leading magazine devoted to traditional black powder hunting and shooting. Each issue is jam-packed with articles on hunting, shooting, gunsmithing, do-it-yourself projects, living history, American history, book and product reviews, and much, much more. Muzzleloader Magazine is the best traditional muzzleloading magazine, bar none. I'd like to thank Jason at Muzzleloader Magazine for his continued support of I Love Muzzleloading and the I Love Muzzleloading podcast. I don't care what you're into. If you're interested in muzzleloading, this is the kind of magazine I think you need to check out. I've been a fan of Muzzleloader magazine even before the sponsorship. I've always been impressed with what Jason has been able to put out with Muzzleloader magazine, and it really means a lot for him to be supporting I Love Muzzleloading and our efforts over here. Thank you, Muzzleloader magazine, for your... This podcast is brought to you by Thor Bullets. Thor Bullets are a premium full-bore muzzleloader bullet designed specifically for modern inline rifles. Thor bullets do not require plastic sabots or belts to be fired, meaning less cleaning for you between shots. The patented copper base creates an airtight seal, giving you greater distance and accuracy. Thor's unique engineering allows the bullets to retain 95% of their weight upon impact, and the controlled expansion ensures large, easy-to-follow blood trails. Thor bullets are currently available in a 50 caliber version that is sized to your specific bore. Thor is also expanding into a new 45 caliber bullet designed for faster 1 in 24 and 1 in 22 twist inline rifles. For more information on these great bullets, visit www.thorbullets.com. We'd like to thank Thor Bullets for their sponsorship of this podcast. So what kind of projects are you dipping into then in between the website and the farm here lately?
I've got a custom rifle I'm building right now, little 54 caliber job. Got the locks set on it. I've got later this year, I need to build a Carolina gun or a Type G. It depends on what designation I'll stick on it, but I've always wanted to build one. I've had some. I've owned, I think, 3 total, and I've got a fellow that asked me about it. I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
But with that is I have to make the locks. I'm not happy with most of the locks out there. So
okay.
I'm sitting here looking at the hardware, the butt plate and trigger guard and stuff. I've cut out a sheet stock and engraved all that. So that's one project. Restoration, let's see, I've got a Stoudenauer hanging over here that I had to put some wood on the forestock. Let's see, I've got a Schuler I'm working on right now, John Schuler. Probably when he was still in Bucks County, or maybe once he moved, but it's right on that cusp. It's got a lot of Bucks County influence. We got a little Evic rifle that's out of Pendleton County. And let's see, and then there's another that's like an Allentown rifle that I'm doing some work to.
Okay.
And then there's another Allentown Fowler I've got to do some fixing to. It got cracked through the wrist area.
So with that kind of variety, are you able to kind of pick a little bit how you're feeling that day or what you're thinking about and kind of dive into that? Is that important to you then in the shop?
It depends.
Okay.
Sometimes it's strange with the shop that with the workload that comes in through the years, and it's always been like this. I may have 2 or 3 Bedford rifles at any one time. Like all together. It's like a run of them, or John Mall pistol or rifle or something. And the cool thing is, it seems that when I'm needing, say one needs a trigger guard or something, that it needs a piece built. Almost always I look around the shop and it's like, I have one. I've the pattern piece sitting in front of me to fix the one that's on the bench. And then I may go for 6 months or a year and never have another Bedford come through the door. And, it kind of rotates over, and I've got somebody else fun to work on. I'm sitting here looking, I've got, what's this little guy? That's a Western PA Farid to work on. Wonderful gun. My favorite thing is when I get a gun in the shop that nobody has fixed. Nobody's touched it. Nobody's tried to restore it. There's no putty in it. And those are the guns I enjoy the most.
Okay.
The ones that have been refinished and have bad restoration and I have to rebuild stuff. It's just, I do it. It's part of, fixing them and making them better. But so many times it takes because you get into it and you find out the old timers, when they used to do restoration, a bunch of them, not all of them, they just take the forestock and whack it off. If it was shattered out across the front towards the nose cap, they just cut it off and put a new piece of wood on, all the way normally back to the entry pipe. So they lose all that integrity in the pieces, and you can tell, or I can tell when I got it on the bench, because it'll have the original ramrod pipes. And so you come out from the entry pipe and it's an original pipe and original nose cap. Now, all that didn't stay with the gun if the forestock was gone. That means somebody didn't want to fix all the slivers and go to that trouble.
Okay.
And it's just, you're like, oh man, that just makes my heart hurt.
Right.
Like,
So how would you repair something then like that with a shattered forearm? You talk about the splinters. Are you going in and fitting pieces in between those cracks and splinters?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Basically, structurally, I put it together. So if it's a shattered gun that's, it's got the slivers and pieces all broken and stuff, I line everything first, clean the cracks out real good so you get a good adhesion with your glue, put it structurally back together, and then start building and putting, first thing you got to do is find a wood that matches. Right. And sometimes I'll use old wood if I have an old stock in the shop that I can cannibalize.
Okay.
Because the old wood always takes stain better. It just gives you a better, and it's more stable. And then I start adding the little pieces back. So, whether it's a serpentine break, so you make a serpentine repair, so it goes with the curl.
Okay. Or
you have to put little slivers and slices in places. And then the key is that every time you do a piece, because I look at guns, I look at restoration like you're dealing with two separate sides of the gun, and you are. But the way the grain structure is on the wood, you have to get that growth ring and structure and the curl, even though you may have the same spacing of the curl. One may take stain better, one's more brilliant. You have to look at how the ray comes up on it. So you study the piece of wood you're going to fix the gun with and make sure you have a dead-on piece of wood as much as you can. Try to match the curl. So not only is the curl the same width, but you got to hit the curl lines as close as you can to get a nice look.
Right.
And so my goal is, and then also if it's a dry gun, say if it's never been out of that, it's never had finish, never been polished and spit shine, then I make my finish as close to dry as I can to get that same attic-y feel and look to it. My goal is that when you look at the gun, if you get it really close to your eye, you'll probably see a glue joint. You'll see something. But my job is to try to make it as nice looking as you can. The old adage they used to have about furniture is like the 3 foot, 3 inch something or something like that. Basically what it is, if you're standing 3 feet away, you can't tell it had restoration, but if you pick it up and look at it 3 inches, you can. The problem with guns is that everybody instantly puts it at 3 inches to their eye. So it doesn't work with furniture because furniture's different. You sit on it, but a rifle, everybody picks it up and looks at it in close detail.
Right. You're not necessarily picking up a chair or a table.
No, they're not getting that close to it. So the guns themselves, you get them in so many, I'll probably do a video sometime of how you can discern restoration on a Kentucky rifle. Because a lot of I do decent work, but I know there's some guys that have passed away, like Louis Parker and stuff. They did some outstanding restoration work.
Right.
And so when you look at their stuff, if you study enough of their work, a lot of times you'll get to know how they distress things. You'll get to know their colors of the steel repairs and things. After a while, I try to tell people, if you pick up a rifle and you look at it with not even a magnifying, you look at it with your eyes, and the first time you see a wood repair or a conversion, it's been on somebody's bench. And at that point in time, you turn magnification up, at least mentally, to look at it really tight. Because if it's been on somebody's bench for any reason, you're dealing with a gun that's had restoration. How much is what you try to figure out.
Okay.
And it's not that restoration's bad.
Right.
There's cars out there that they sell at Meekums and all these other places for big money. that have had repairs.
Yeah, when you were talking about repairing the forestock, it made me, I thought of, a little bit of auto body restoration.
Oh, yeah.
Very similar process.
Yeah, and the kicker for me is I want it to look as good as I can when it goes out of the shop. I want it to feel and look the same. But I've tried to tell people, sometimes you use your fingers and your hands. Use your eyes and then use your hands. Because when you run it, I had a guy years ago at one of the shows says, I've had 10 people look at this gun. They can't tell me where I restored it. And he did. He did a really nice job. Color looked good. Curl looked good. And the only thing I did, I said, I really don't want to play this game. He says, no. And everybody's looked at it. You can't tell me. And the only thing I did is I'm sitting there looking at it, and I took my fingers and I pinched both sides of the forestock, and I ran my hand out, and it had a good curl to it. So it had like a ripple. Uh-huh. So it felt like an old time washboard. And I ran my fingers out there, and as soon as it went like a washboard, and it went smooth. It was perfectly smooth from there to the nose cap. I ran my hand back to where I felt the ripple again. I looked at it, I said, you fixed it right there. Oh, he got mad. He snatched the gun out of my hand, said bad words, and we laughed about it later. But it's like, yeah, you use your hands. If you're feeling a gun lock and you've felt enough original gun locks, you come to realize that over time, even though it's steel and it may have started out with a crisp edge, over time, whether I'm sitting there looking at a big horse pistol, of being handled, pushed across the table, put down in holsters on a saddle or buckets, that things get smoothed off. Yeah. And so many times you can feel with a conversion, you just rub your hands over. And as soon as you feel a little sharp burr or a little sharp edge, it's like, why is that there? And then you look at the rest of it.
That's fascinating. I think muzzleloading is something that is it uses all of your senses, at different stages. And I really like that thought, running your hand across it.
I do too. Well, in the old timers, they would sniff patch boxes. They'd smell the patch box.
Really?
Because some of the guys would use chemicals to try to age stuff.
Okay.
And even, sometimes you can take it and it's just stuff you learn over time. I'm still learning every day. I go to shows and see cool things all the time.
So in that notion, are they trying to age a patch box to make it, look like that dried up, attic wood in there if it's not that, or is it something else that they're trying to age?
Oh, sometimes they would put like ammonia and stuff inside to try to dry things out.
Okay.
And most of the time it's not that hard to discern a lot of this stuff. Once you start collecting, and here again, that's why I'm trying to give a service out there. People want to build a collection and they want to pay me to look at stuff or pay me to track it in bird dog. I don't mind. I enjoy it. But if I were going to collect antique cars, I would go find the best antique car restoration guy out there that I knew was honest. And I would pay him to get me a car.
Right.
If you're going to spend $50,000 or $100,000 and you think that you're going to get educated the first time you go to a couple sales and it's like, this is the price structure. At auctions, in an auction venue, it takes two people to set a price. And so many times people get stuff and then they realize, oh man, I didn't realize it had this, and this done. Well, you don't want to get educated and spend a bunch of money doing that. You need to find somebody you trust. And there's a lot of collectors out there. There's a lot of good collectors, and then there's some that are, just say they're a little sneaky.
Yeah, there's always ornery. There's ornery everywhere.
There is. And it takes the fun out of it.
Right.
It takes all the fun. This stuff's supposed to make us all happy. And, we collect these guns, we build them, we shoot them, we do all that. But when they put the box and put the screws in and put us down the ground, we're not taking this stuff with us.
Right.
We might be able to take a couple with us. I keep telling my wife when they put me in the ground, putting my rifle in my hands, and my buddies all saying, we're going to dig you up and get it back.
Right.
I'm like, well, at least you're coming to visit.
Oh, that's good.
I've told them that a couple times.
Maybe
I said, I'm taking my tomahawk, I'm
stand.
taking my bag and horn, I'm taking my rifle. I'm going to have it all in the box with me. It's like, it's not going to stay long, buddy.
Oh man. We've talked a bit about the collecting side of this. What tips would you have for somebody that is, looking to learn and study how to build a flintlock or a muzzleloader in general?
As far as the building side, Kempton used to be Dixon's gun fair, but now they transferred it down to the fairgrounds, or whether that little place is down in Kempton. That's one of the best places for somebody that wants to learn how to build guns. If you're going to build rifles, you've got a whole bucket full of really accomplished makers that are sharing. They're sharing their information for nothing. You're not having to pay for a tuition for a week-long school or something. And it's not that the week-long things aren't great. They're great too.
Yeah.
But you can sit there and go through the seminars and listen to these people, and they'll explain a whole lot of details. And I see it all the time where guys are sitting there with their clipboards or their phones or something, taking notes and stuff. That's smart.
Yeah.
The problem I've had for all these years of going to that show, I've always been behind the table, either hustling, trying to just sell things or take orders, or I'm doing the seminar. But I don't get the chance to hear a lot of these other guys. And so, I've been fortunate to know a lot of these guys. And then we sit in a hotel room after these shows, and we start talking about gunsmiths and restoration. We talk about all kinds of things that are gun related. Some really good makers. We still get together and talk about stuff. And if somebody has a couple good guns or something they picked up at the show, we take it back to the room. And, I don't know if anybody pontificates so much, but we definitely enjoy conversation.
Yeah. That's part of the fun of an event like that. It's, for me, it's about a 12-hour drive, but the being there and listening to the seminars has just been wonderful. But then just the atmosphere, you don't have a whole lot of time, again, in the hustle and bustle of life to sit down with a group of people from the muzzleloading community like that and really dive into things. And you can really do that at an event like Kempton.
Well, and you can. And the thing is, if you get to know somebody, like I got to know Keith Casteel, and he's a personal friend. I mean,
yeah.
And, and he was kind enough to open a shop and let me come in and hang out in there and learn, and you could call him and talk to him and work through the details. I mean, if you're building scratch guns, you're going to make mistakes. I mean, everybody, oh man, the ramrod went here or there, or, you got lock bolts that went crooked or wanky or broke something off a tap or a screw. That's where it helps having a good gunsmith near you to run over and say, oh crap, can you help me get out of this?
Right.
And I was fortunate with Keith that, he was left-handed, I was left-handed. I'd watch him do something, and I didn't have to reverse things in my brain. It's like, okay, that's how this works. Huh. Yeah, but not everybody has that.
Yeah.
The cool thing is, if you go to Kempton and you get to see all these people and you get to know them, and then you get to talk to them, you say, hey, this guy really knows a lot, and he lives, an hour from me. And then it makes it, get a relationship there.
Yeah, you get that connection, and that can really help. Really.
Mm-hmm. And then the other side is to build nice guns. Go to some of the shows. I mean, there's the Kentucky Rifle Association show. You have to be a member to be able to go to that up in Mars, Cranberry, up above Pittsburgh. But there's a lot of the little satellite shows that you can go to, like the Tennessee show, like some of the Virginia shows. And if you get to know a member, then you make a connection. And so the key is that if you want to build a really great Bonnewitz, then go to a show and ask somebody and tell them what you're interested in in what you want to see. And he'll probably say, go talk to Joe over there. He's got 2 of those. And Joe may not have them, but if you make a good relationship, he might invite you to his house. He may send you pictures. He may let you take a tracing of something. I think the biggest thing I can see with builders, contemporary builders, that they need to keep in mind is that a lot of these collectors, they used to say they were old, grumpy old guys, and some of them aren't. But they're grumpy old guys that have collected this stuff and have a lot of money invested in it. So, I've tried to explain to people, when you go to the CLA show and there's a guy that has his old rifles up on the wall and he brought them for a display or he put them on the table. I mean, he didn't bring them to sell them. He brought them to share. And he has a lot invested in. Every time you take your stuff out of the house or out of the safe or wherever, you worry about it. I mean, every time you go in a restaurant, you think about your stuff in the car, you go to the hotel, and you got to carry it in and out.
Yeah.
And we all know what it's like to carry our own stuff. I don't want to lose one of my rifles that I built, but I'd be devastated if I lost a really nice old original gun. That would be like,
yeah, that's gut wrenching. That's not something that you can, and not that it's, not as bad, but you can build another gun, but replacing an original is increasingly difficult. Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing is not that you got to pay homage to these guys that own the guns. I think the main thing is just be respectful and be kind. I mean, all this stuff, I mean, in this world, if you're a kind person, people are more than happy to help you. And I think the kicker is that, I don't know, it's just one of those things at the shows that a lot of the KRA guys and the collectors are nice people. They just very, very closed. But here again, I found that once you get into their circle and you start to get to talk to them, it's like, they're more than happy to help. And when the foundation, Kentucky Rifle Foundation, sets up a display, which they normally do at the CLA and some of the other smaller shows, even like Baltimore, the cross section of the material that you'll see there, even at Kempton, they have a focal point of what they try to pull that display together. So whether, like last year, I think it was Jacob George up at Kempton, and they pulled in all the stops that they could to get the best display together of Jacob George's. So, each year they do that. I think it's to be able to see that many at one time, you might never see that again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing that's hard to impress upon people is as much as this stuff has been around for a couple hundred years, the fleeting nature of seeing it together. I mean, it can be just once that you see a group of things. And it's not that people don't want it to be seen, but if you are trying to schedule anything these days, it can be difficult. And if you're trying to schedule a traveling tour of antique muzzleloaders and original pieces, that becomes, I was listening to a conversation at the CLA last year where somebody mentioned that they were trying to set up and people kept coming over to talk, and they were setting up and had to tell them to go away because they had $500,000 worth of guns on the floor. They were trying to get up on the tables. And when you think about it in that context, it's like, they want to talk, they want to hang out and share things, but they want to get the valuable things up off the floor where our feet are.
That's the case. I mean, every time you see some of the displays get pulled together, it's like, wow. Yeah. And then the other side, from an educational standpoint, is you can get the all those little stick drive things from the foundation where they have a president's display each year up at the big show.
Yeah.
And you'll have like 20, or a pistol display. I think they had about 50 Kentucky Rifle pistols, and all at one time. And so with those, you can sit there with your computer. I was talking to one gun builder here recently. He said he has like a big screen, computer screen above his workbench. And so when I thought, I don't necessarily want to see one on my bench, but I could see where it'd be pretty handy item to have.
Yeah.
And then he gets those stick drives from the foundation, puts them in, and if he's building a newcomer rifle or whatever he's building, he can just blow it up right there so he can see exactly what he's getting into.
That's very interesting. I've heard a lot of folks will have like an iPad or something because it's a larger screened iPad, but it's a smaller form factor and not necessarily as intrusive into the shop. I understand the desire to not have a big screen in there. There's a screen everywhere else. We don't need one in the shop.
It takes the fun out. But I can't. I mean, I've always had books propped up on mine. You can always tell the guns that a particular builder liked the best, because they're the ones when you open them up, they got flicks of stain in them, they got sawdust in them. You know, it's like I bought books from guys before, and you get through there, and it's like you get to a Beck or something. You're like, holy mackerel! And then you dump it, you bam the book on a bench, and there's a pile of sawdust. Like, yeah, I guess Joe made one of those.
Maybe a couple.
Yeah, you can see his favorites. My books, my poor old Shumway books, I had to get another set because the shop set, I mean, the spines broke out of them. And they're all dilapidated, but that's, yeah. And I put little notes in mine as of different guns I've worked on through the years. I just make little side notes inside and put a little star on them or something that tells me I fixed it at one time, because I forget. I've done this a long time, and there's a lot of toys out there that I've worked on, and I walk up and I look at it and go, I think I know that gun. And then I pick it up and I start looking at the conversion. I start looking at the barrel like, I do know that gun. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, you kind of rediscover it a little bit. You know, you're not to the point of hiding your own Easter eggs, but there's still that fun discovery.
It's just, I see them come up at auction occasionally. I'm like, yep, that's a nice piece right there.
So what would you say is maybe the most extensive restoration that you've done over the years? Extensive. I've had them come in bags before. I mean, literally in a paper bag, where you got the barrel and the stocks in the paper. I just fixed one. I guess that was this year. It went out. I delivered it just before Baltimore, and it was a Shenandoah Valley gun. Pieces, they had the front end of it up to the nose cap, and they had they had one pipe on the front end, the forestock. Then there was about a 12 or a 14 inch, at least 14 inch section missing from that chunk of wood all the way back towards the entry pipe. And then, it needed a conversion done to it, and it needed some other woodwork done. And that was a pretty extensive restoration. Basically what I did is just kept building the wood out, kept doing serpentine joints and stuff to get the two pieces of wood coming together, because it had shatters all the way out the front. You just keep building it back and fix what you have. Keep as much surface as you can, original surface, as far as the wood goes. Then once you pull it all back, then I put the piece in the middle. And tab that in, then had to get a pipe for it, make I had to make a pipe for it. But pretty neat gun. It was an important gun that was a fun one to work on. Yeah. I imagine something like that always comes with, a story and impact, just to you as an artist.
It does. I just wish I was the guy that bought it at the auction. That's all. I would have been dancing all the way to the car. My wife always knows when I have a good gun, because I come back from a gun show, I'm in the happiest mood. She's like, "You got a nice gun, didn't you?" It's like, I certainly did. She's told me I woke up, not even waking up. I have woken her up in the middle of the night, and all I say is, "Oh my gosh, that's a good gun," and I laugh. And she's like, you were asleep, Brian, when you said that. I'm like, yeah, I was having a good dream, obviously.
Oh, that's great. Wow.
No, she puts up with a good bit.
Oh, yeah.
Not bad stuff.
Right. Yeah, you could be into antique cars too. That's.
If I didn't do guns, I'd probably be doing antique motorcycles or cars. But honestly, I look at old cars now and then, and, I look at them on the marketplace, and I think, man, go get that old truck. And I'm like, why do I want to fix that? I mean, I fix broken things all the time. Why do I want to drive one?
Right.
No. I just want to get in, turn the key. It does my, chore for the day, and I come back home.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't need another project.
I don't need enough. I built, helped build our house, and we got greenhouses. I got enough projects. I don't need any new ones. And now this website, this has been a project.
The antique truck may have been an easier route to go.
I think it probably would have. I think I know more about trucks than I do websites. I promise. I almost ended up with a Porsche 911 years ago. I had a guy that wanted to trade his Porsche 911 for a rifle I built. And I kept looking at that. And I mean, I'm a country guy that's, I've always had 4-wheel drives and stuff. Yeah. And I kept looking at that little car, and I thought, yeah, that's probably a girl magnet right there, but they're going to want to drive it, and I'm never going to get to drive it. And it looks fragile.
Right.
And I sat in the thing, and I felt like I ran a go-kart one time, a couple of times, and I'm thinking, man, this isn't far from that go-kart. Right. And I felt let's just say very vulnerable.
Yes. There's not a whole lot there.
No. And I'm thinking, hey, it's a little German car, it's not a beer can, but it's not far from it.
Yep.
And I thought, I'll pass. And so we didn't get the little 911. I told my wife years later after we were married, and told her about it was one of those about the thing. And she was like, oh my God, why didn't you get that? I would have loved that car. I'm like, yeah, that's why I didn't get it. Look at this rifle I've got. Isn't that awesome?
This is so much cooler, honey.
My thing is, it's like new cars. I don't buy new cars.
Right.
I've always had the feeling, I've got family that, brothers and stuff that have quite a few new cars in them. I just want one that's dependable. But what'll happen is that if I have, if I got $10,000 that I'm going to spend on a car, or say 20 or whatever, I'd rather have the cheaper car. Give me a $15,000 car, 10,000 or whatever. And then I'd rather take that extra $5,000 or $8,000 or whatever and go buy a Kentucky rifle.
Right.
That makes me happy.
I don't need to look cool driving to the grocery store.
No, I do not.
That's not my thing. Yep.
Yeah. When you get a really great gun in your hand, it's like, oh man. And the thing is, I like guns I like Southern guns. I like Bedfords. I like Maryland guns. I like pencils. I just like a lot of them,
Yeah.
If they have good architecture, good surface, good artwork, they don't have to be fancy. They just have to have good architecture to start off with. Hmm. And that, and there's so many different variations and so many makers that's what keeps it intriguing. If you only collect, say, Bedford County, and you go to some of the big shows like a Baltimore, you may see 1 or 2 guns in there. So you walk the whole place looking for those 2 guns.
Right. Well,
I walk through there and I like Indian trade guns, and I like, colonial stuff and Jaegers and things. I always find something fun.
You start adding that up, and a new pickup truck. That's a lot of nice. That's a lot of nice long rifles right there.
Yeah, you could buy a lot of nice long rifles. Absolutely. And it's not always the monetary value. I mean, one of my favorite little guns that I own is a very plain little walnut stock Kentucky gun. And it's probably the cheapest. It's absolutely, I bought it at a bargain price in a Civil War shop, but it's one of the cheapest guns I ever bought. But that little gun, because of the shape, the architecture, and it has this really flamboyant trigger guard, makes me happy.
Yeah.
I picked it up this morning and put it back in the case because it was out in the office. And it is just such a neat little gun.
I've tried to share with other folks, other guys my age and younger, that, it's not everything that you like or that is valuable because of a high dollar amount on it. You can go to a show and, there are several sub $1,500 guns that are just gorgeous out there. Mm-hmm. If you're patient and you're looking, if you can make it out to some of the shows out there, there are some really beautiful pieces that just need a new home, and you can find them.
Well, and the kicker is, if you find, there's a lot of really reasonable that everybody thinks that, oh man, the great guns are carved and all this. Well, they are, but they also are very expensive. As soon as you get into lots of patch boxes and embellishment stuff, that's, value wise and the interest is higher. But you can get into some really, really nice, architecturally pleasing guns that you can relate to. I had a gun one time that was really fancy. It was a Jacob Young rifle. It had silver all over and had some gold inlay, and it was just an exquisite gun. Workmanship, artwork, he was right on. He was top of the line, top of the game. And it was, here again, it was out of my pay grade, but we made it work.
Yeah.
And I kept that gun for, a few years there. And when I put it on my lap, I knew it was a great gun. Absolutely an outstanding gun. But it was hard for me it was a rich man's gun when it was built. It was built for somebody very wealthy. It was sold to somebody very wealthy. And now this guy that's not ultra wealthy, at least not money-wise, owns it. And it's not the kind of gun that I would have bought back then, but yet I appreciated it. And I took it to the CLA and I took it to KRA and shared it, and people took pictures. And so I wanted to make sure people that wanted to see it could see it, which we did. And then I ended up selling it because we had things happening here at the house. And, I didn't regret it. I didn't regret selling the gun because it was just, like I say, I just bought this. Well, I've had it 2 years. The little walnut stock Kentucky gun I told you about. That little gun actually makes me about as happy as the Jacob Young did, just because it's a simplistic rifle that is probably more what I would have had in the 18th century. The fanciest gun in the world doesn't necessarily mean that that's the gun that makes you the happiest. And I've talked to other collectors that you walk in and say, what's your favorite gun? And they'll point one over on the side that may not be their stellar art gun, but it's a gun that maybe a friend had, maybe their father had. It has a connection that it's not about the money. It's not about the artwork. Sometimes it's the, who it came from, or, the history behind it. And that's the great thing about Kentucky rifles is there is so much here. Whether it's a Sunday going to meet and shoot gun, over the log rifle, a chunk gun, everything has this. And the cool thing is when you know who owned it, and if it has an owner's name on top of it that says, okay, this was, Alvin York rifle or whatever, you're right. Like, man, that's, that pulls history into it, and that makes something even more special. At least to me, it does.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That connection to all those things and all the people that, a lot of pieces didn't make it to now. And I think that that makes the ones that did important, and, somebody saw value in that, or somebody stuck it in a safe corner of a barn and it survived, for whatever reason.
Yeah. Well, and you look at the Civil War. I mean, the Civil War, a whole lot of stuff was destroyed. I mean, so many guns were taken to battle and they never came off the field, or they were destroyed when one faction went through one section or other, destroying all the firearms. And the fact that we have the survival rate of some of these pieces, just like Christian Springs guns. Yeah. You start doing the numbers, and it's like that the survival rate of those rifles is very high. If overall, I mean, you look at how many Christian odors are out there, and it's a couple of the Albricks. And, so many, the reasons they were is because they were very high art forms, obviously prizes for the family, or they went back to Europe as a prize for some officer. But when you start studying those guns, how they had that much time during the Revolution, when you would have thought they'd just been cranking out muskets or
Right.
utilitarian guns, and he's sitting there putting wire work all over a gun and, doing these beautiful side opening boxes. Like, wow. I mean,
the focus during such a tumultuous time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think even today, things can seem kind of weird, and it can be kind of difficult to focus on something like a muzzleloader, it seems, but people have been doing that for
it's
years.
A good distraction. I think so much of it when you get in your shop and everything's working a lot. And it's just, I don't listen to the news. I don't start my morning out by listening to what's happening everywhere in the world, because most of the time it's depressing.
Yeah. There's no sense in ruining a good day when it's start.
No, you start your day out on a negative. It's like, no, that's like being around people that are extremely negative. It's like, and that's the cool thing, like with Keith, go down when I used to work with Keith, and, he was always positive. He empowered people to want to do stuff. They'd come in and it would, look like a 2x4 or something. They're like, oh my God, give me that thing. And he'd whack some wood off of it and hand it back to them and say, no, go home, square that up. You can do this. And to have that positive input, it didn't discourage you. And somebody said, holy crap, would you eat that thing up with a beaver on a stick or what?
So what are 5 books or resources that you would recommend to somebody looking to get more into either collecting or building or both?
Probably the first thing I would probably do, most people run to the Kindig book. And the Kindig book gives you a whole big package of high quality carved guns. But if your budget's not in to that thing, if you're wanting to collect and that, okay, these guns are going to be, any of those guns are like 20, 40, 70,000 on up. So my thing is, look at the region you live in. If you live in Indiana, go buy Jeff Yeager's book on Indiana stuff. I would say, look at the region you live in if you're going to collect. If you're in Tennessee and you like Tennessee guns, then buy the books out there that are Tennessee related. Jerry Noble had some books put out. Randall Pierce just put a book out recently on Tennessee stuff. Go to the shows and see as much as you can, get to know these people, and they'll help direct you in the regions that you're interested in. As far as collecting and learning about restoration work and of that nature, I'm hoping in the future I can do some tutorials on the website to be able to kind of tell people. I've done it for KRA before. I've done seminars where I'm actually go through all the details of places you look for restoration that are common.
Yeah.
I mean, certain areas like toe plates and locks and lock conversion. Once you get to know some of the details, the majority of the restoration is pretty easy to discern. If you're doing Virginia stuff, there's a fair amount of Virginia books out there. I think regional characteristic stuff, but focus what you want as far as your collection. If you're doing Bedford, learn as much as you can about Bedford. Talk to guys that collect Bedfords, and they can help you some. Or contact somebody that you trust, they'll help you. Book-wise, as far as gun building goes, there's quite a few videos out there. I mean, there's Herschel's done videos years ago, who we just lost here recently. Frank's done videos. Wallace has done those. There's so many tutorials out there where guys are building guns from scratch to finish. And you can sit there and keep watching the same thing over and over and over again until you get it, until you learn how to do it. The other resource would be going to Kempton and just spend the time up there for that weekend and learn as much as you can. I can't think of any other, there's lots of books. Shumway's books are wonderful. But here again, these are big early colonial guns. I keep the only thing I can tell you, I haven't met a gun book that I probably haven't wanted to buy or did buy. I mean, I just got Shelby Gillaine's third Kentucky book. And so some people don't care about Kentucky guns, but I personally like them. I think they're interesting stuff too.
To round us out here, we've talked a little bit about the website, but just to wrap things up, where can people find your work?
It's Lamaster Arms, Lamaster, lamasterarms.com. And I'm putting some of the stuff that I've built up there. And we keep adding more content all the time. As we photograph stuff, the proceedings are we get guns in that are on consignment. We are photographing them, putting them up. Once they sell, they'll put over into the library. And we're building a library. Plus, we got videos that are linking to YouTube and back. Until we're able to find a way that we can put all the videos on the website directly, we're needing to use the YouTube as a holding station or a medium place to pop things in. But other than that, I mean, that's what's happening there. Hopefully here in the future, we'll be doing some videos in the shop as I'm building some guns that are coming up. But right now, my thing has always been, if you're going to do something and it's a big project, just like building a gun, the first thing I want to do is I want to make my entry pipes, and I make my pipes, and I clean my trigger guard, and I, rework my lock or build the lock or whatever has to happen. Focus on one thing, try to do as good as you can before you step into the next stage. And that's how we're trying to roll with the website. We're just trying to do one thing, do it as good as we can. I keep working on my photography booth or studio thing to try to get as good a quality pictures as we can.
Yeah.
And it's getting better. We're still not quite where I'd like to be with that. But I think that's pretty much it. We're working on our educational content that I'm probably going to do some tutorial things as far as hunting, like in bad weather. I did a couple, but the wind was blowing so much the microphone was all cracky and stuff, and I don't think they were able to use some of that content. But just try to get people inspired that, hey, you can hunt in bad weather, you can build guns, you can collect them. Just help people find a place where they can learn as much as we can share. That's I think the key.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I'm really excited about what you're doing with Lamaster Arms. And I'm really excited about the upcoming seminars for sure out at Kempton. I'm sure that'll be great.
Well, I appreciate you contacting me to do this interview.
Yeah.
I think what you're doing is a lot of what I'm trying to somewhere down the line do, as far as, to be able to show things, showcase guns, possibly in the future, showcase people that are like collectors. There's a lot of these old collectors that are getting older. I'd love to be able to sit down with them and do a little, not that I want to be a interview guy. I don't really want to be that guy, but if there's not somebody else that's filling that niche or need, we're losing so many good old collectors right now, and the stories they tell and the things they found through the years is that wealth of knowledge is going away.
Yeah. It needs to be preserved.
It does. I mean, and a lot of these guys are more than, if I can think of 20 that if I called them today and said, hey, I want to do an interview. Will you come up here to the house and we'll sit down next to the fireplace and just tell me basically the same thing you're doing with me. What old guns are your favorites? Where did you find this? And they would just enjoy it so much. And I think the rest of the community out there, the collectors and even the builders, would appreciate hearing the stories as well.
Absolutely. You've got to do that. I'm gonna bug you about that until you make it happen, Brian.
you can. It's just we've got a few other hurdles in front of us before we get there. But yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's in anything I can do. If you ever have any questions, I know you got a good team helping you out. But if there's ever anything I can do to point you to equipment, please let me know.
I will definitely take you up on that.
Okay.
Right now, I'm just working with an iPhone for everything, and it's like, it's not that good a quality, and we're just kind of swimming upstream right now.
Yeah, you'll get there, and I'm really excited, and I think that'll be great for the community in the future of this. The more we can preserve those stories and the people, I think the better off we'll be.
Well, and yeah, I think the fun part would be you get a couple of these collectors that have their collections and they don't share them much. And then you just, at some point I'd love to get like 2 or 3 John Armstrongs all sitting there on the ottoman and you're sitting there talking to a guy that's done a lot of research on John Armstrong, or even 2. You pull 2 guys that I know that both of them, Armstrong is a passion in collecting and knowing about that man, and just sit down and have a conversation with him. I think that would be really, really interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be incredible. We'll have a lot of links to what Brian mentioned in the show notes for this episode, as well as at the blog post at ilovemuzzleloading.com for you to check out and reference in the future. Don't try to search this stuff while you're driving, though. Wait until you're safely stopped before you start looking some of this up. It'll all be there when you stop. I'd like to thank Brian again for taking the time out of his busy day to chat with us. I hope that it was as informative for you as it was for me. I'm energized now to try to get back into the shop and do a little bit more work on a couple of the kits that we're building. And I'm really excited about this episode. I hope that you enjoy it. If you did, or if you didn't, reach out and let me know. The podcast is, I think I've mentioned it before, it's kind of as far as the internet goes, an old school format. So we have limited reporting back on it, which is good. I really love the podcast format, but as we continue to push out episodes here, it's always nice to get a little feedback to make sure that we're still on the right track with what you folks out there want to hear. So you can leave a comment, you can shoot an email, or you can review us on the podcast platforms. That is a big help to reach new people and to reach other muzzleloading enthusiasts out there who might not know about the program. If you're listening to this as it comes out, we're in the beginning of May here, and May is an action-packed month for me here at I Love Muzzleloading. We'll be at 5 Metals at the Trace over in Ligonier, Indiana, the first weekend in May. After that, 1 week later, I'll be out in Virginia at Martin Station for the first time. Really excited and bringing the whole family along to camp out in the 18th century for the weekend and hang out with friends. So if you're in the area, check out both of those events. I bring all this up because there'll be a lot of 18th century and living history traditional flintlock videos coming out on the channel as we head through May and into June. And after that, we'll start planning some more of our redneck muzzleloader science videos as we head into the fall hunting season. So I'm hoping that you find those informative. I've got some more equipment and some more tools for us to use to diagnose and play with some of the statistics around muzzleloading and hopefully answer some of your muzzleloading hunting questions with some practically applied tests. That's all I've got for you this week. I really hope that you enjoyed the episode. We've got quite a few more on the way. We're back on track, back on schedule, and I really appreciate everybody who's hung around, waited for these episodes. I hope to keep delivering quality that you enjoy. Once again, I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.